Romano, fai attenzione lì che è mezzo vuoto.
On the outskirts of Rome, archaeologists are breaking into a secret underground chamber.
Che faccio? Continuo a allargare qua? Poi allarghiamo là. Oh.
Avrei bisogno di un caschetto con la luce.
It could reveal clues to the disappearance of an ancient palace.
Con le mani così,
Poi
giusto?
mani in alto.
Emperor Nero's legendary golden house.
Attento anche te però, eh?
Allora,
E c'è tantissimo materiale combusto. Ossa.
Rome, the eternal city. Its monumental wonders still stand proud after 2 millennia of history. And one of its most fascinating ancient structures lies buried here, beneath the city. The Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a vast palace built in the 1st century AD. It was the most extravagant construction in the history of Rome. Why was the Golden House buried? And what can its fate reveal about its builder, Rome's most notorious emperor, Nero? Today, teams of experts are launching investigations across Italy that could offer new clues.
We are in the core of Rome. It's incredible. We work where emperors have worked. It's amazing.
Beneath the Colle Opio Park in the center of Rome, a team of conservation specialists is fighting to preserve the surviving remains of the Domus Aurea, an underground maze of painted rooms and corridors. Rome native Maria Bartoli is the head of conservation.
La sensazione di lavorare per la Domus Aurea è sicuramente di un grande orgoglio di far parte di un gruppo che si occupa della conservazione di un monumento così talmente importante.
The surviving sections of the Domus Aurea are buried up to 13 feet deep. Until excavation in the 18th century, almost all of the rooms were backfilled with soil and rubble too. The Golden House is in fragile condition.
C'è anche il senso di grande responsabilità nel sapere che ci si sta occupando di un monumento che ha talmente tante problematiche che è molto difficile da risolvere.
The earth above weighs more than 700 pounds per square foot. The 2,000-year-old structure wasn't built to bear this vast load, so it's in danger of collapsing.
Queste sono efflorescenze saline che trattengono goccioline di acqua.
Water is infiltrating from above, and the once highly decorated walls are coated in dirt.
È completamente coperta da questo strato spesso di residui terrosi molto compatti, carbonatati e aderenti alla superficie della pellicola pittorica.
The team must carefully clear the wall.
L'operazione non è semplice perché si rischia di perdere dei dettagli preziosi della decorazione.
Che bisogna assolutamente assottigliare.
The work is painstaking. It takes hours to reveal and preserve every inch of the ancient decoration. And with every passing day, the risk of losing this precious art grows greater.
Questi residui sono potenzialmente molto dannosi perché da una parte possono innescare attacchi microbiologici, possono distaccarsi portando con sé parte della decorazione.
Large swathes of the ancient walls have already been eaten away by harmful algae that thrive in the humid climate here. Maria must clean all of the walls to prevent another biological attack. In the vast underground maze, she has a gargantuan task ahead of her. American archaeologist Darius Aria is investigating why Nero's magnificent palace ended up rotting underground. 22 years ago, Darius traded his home in the United States for Italy's capital to follow his childhood fascination with Roman history.
Nero is a very interesting character. I mean, this person looms in the history books larger than life. He was a showman. He's still fascinating. And those anecdotes that are applied to him, whether or not they're true, just adds to those layers of understanding the nuanced character of Nero.
The fate of the Domus Aurea may be connected to Nero's own story. Nero became emperor at just 16 after his stepfather Claudius died in 54 AD. Some say Claudius was poisoned by his wife, Agrippina, to make way for her son. Ancient writers described Nero as a cold-blooded ruler, reporting he poisoned his stepbrother out of jealousy and had his domineering mother assassinated. They claimed his taste for violence was limitless. Roaming the streets at night in disguise, he would stab victims at random and throw them into the sewers. Darius wants to explore how much of Nero's reputation is true, and if it is connected to the fate of the Domus Aurea. A few feet into the complex, he spots a first clue: an unexcavated room.
This room is filled with debris. It's filled with fragments of brick, pottery, fragments of tuff. This is all building material. I see some decoration, little bits and pieces of marble here and there, and porphyry. But this is an intentional fill. This is a massive project to fill in this entire space in a very orderly fashion.
It is clear evidence someone deliberately buried the Domus Aurea.
Wow. Look at this.
Strange shapes on the floor in one of the rooms could shed some more light.
You can see a pattern in the cement, and literally it's showing you where there were panels of cut marble that made a decorative pattern. They've been removed, so all we have is just the imprint of what they once were and how beautifully this floor would have been.
Decorative marble was an unmistakable mark of luxury in the Roman world.
We can still see that you have this beautiful ceiling with all kinds of decorative features and shapes, elements, framing then with the stucco work, and there are traces of gilding in the ceiling.
Darius can still make out remains of unimaginable splendor. It's clear that when Nero built the Domus Aurea, he spared no expense. Rooms were decorated with brilliant marble walls and frescoes to impress his guests. Ancient sources describe Nero's hunger for opulence. They say he owned a golden fishing net, a golden box in which he kept deadly poisons. Even his chamber pot was made of gold. He plundered the gold for his palace from all the corners of his vast empire.
It was a place for entertainment and leisure more than anything else. This is not here the residence of the emperor. This is a place for accommodating guests and putting on a great show.
The clues suggest that Nero's taste for luxury might be a factor in the fate of his golden house. In Tivoli, just outside Rome, at the Villa Adriana, archaeologists Benedetta Adembri and Marco Fabbri are excavating the palace of the Emperor Hadrian, who came just 49 years after Nero.
Questo è l'edificio, no?
Sì, questo è l'edificio, questo di fronte a noi.
Discoveries here may help reveal if Nero's Domus Aurea was uniquely extravagant, or if other emperors indulged in similar extreme luxury. Today, the team is investigating an intriguing room inside Hadrian's gymnasium.
Così noi facciamo anche le nostre foto.
Sì.
It was reused in later times and new floors were added. Benedetta and Marco have discovered a void below them. It's possible that a forgotten part of the original room might be hidden beneath.
Noi speriamo di trovare uno stato di conservazione migliore possibile, soprattutto con dei rivestimenti parietali e pavimentali che sono poco noti e sarebbe, come dire, delle scoperte eccezionali.
But they can't just break up the floor without knowing what lies beneath. It could cave in, risking their safety and damage to ancient remains.
Vai, mandiamo. Stiamo registrando adesso.
The team lowers a camera down into the hole to inspect the void. It reveals the walls continue below the floor, but almost the entire space is filled with rubble.
Cerchiamo di togliere queste due mattonelle.
Now Marco can break up the floor. The challenge is to remove the right tiles. One mistake and the floor could collapse over the void.
Che faccio? Continuo a allargare qua? Okay.
Now Marco can see the walls below, but it's hard to make out any details.
Avrei bisogno di un caschetto con la luce.
Marco decides to venture into the cavity.
No, mi sono bloccato.
Even with 40 years of experience, this is one of the most challenging excavations in his career.
Adesso
non la vedi, però la senti coi piedi.
con le mani così, giusto?
Con le mani in alto. Okay.
On the Palatine, one of Rome's 7 hills, archaeologist Maria Teresa D'Alessio is investigating an intriguing site.
Allora ragazzi, andiamo?
A structure contemporary to Nero's Domus Aurea.
We are in front of the Arch of Constantine, and the Square of Colosseum is it's one of the most wonderful places in Rome for an archaeologist, but it's also a little scary, big responsibility.
The site is less than 500 yards from the buried remains of Nero's Golden House. Maria Teresa believes they could be connected.
Probably they were in the project of the structures related to the Domus Aurea. We know this from the orientation of the structure, from the building techniques.
This structure was originally just beyond the boundary of Nero's Golden House. It shows just how vast the whole palace was.
The Domus Aurea occupied a very big part of the city.
Ancient writers describe 300 rooms, lavishly decorated with gold, gems, and mother of pearl. The palace grounds spread between Rome's Oppian Hill and Palatine Hill, covering an area more than 20 times larger than the Colosseum. In the middle, Nero built a private lake for boating. Around the palace, he grew lavish gardens, vineyards, and forests. And at the entrance, he placed a colossal 120-foot-tall bronze statue of himself. The Domus Aurea was a gigantic construction.
Yeah.
Maria Teresa's team is on a mission to unearth the structures here. They could shed new light on who destroyed the Domus Aurea and why.
We started from the high part of the level, and nothing was visible before we worked here. And now we are going down through times, through the history. It's like assembling a puzzle.
Maria Teresa is checking the team's progress when one of her excavators discovers what could be a clue.
Oh, wow.
110 miles south, at Baia.
Allora ragazzi, la boa è qui.
A team of underwater archaeologists is investigating an extraordinary Roman city. Seismic activity in the 4th century AD plunged Baia into the sea. 300 years earlier, in Nero's time, it was a fashionable seaside resort, famed for its thermal springs and bathhouses. Vast villas and estates filled the coastline, only to slip into the sea.
We have around 177 hectares of Roman ruins underwater.
Barbara Davide spearheads the project to map and restore the sunken villas that belonged to Nero, his family, and Rome's political elite. Barbara and her dive team head out on the boat to where the ruins of an imperial property are submerged.
It's always exciting to start an activity underwater.
Some 16 feet below the surface, beautiful statues come into view, grouped around a long room.
We can see first the mother of Claudius, of the Emperor Claudius, as Venus, and the status of probably one of the daughter of Claudius or one of the daughter of the imperial family.
The statues depict members of Nero's family, the first imperial dynasty to rule Rome. They're evidence of the presence of the emperor here and show how important Baia was for his whole ruling family. Nero's ancestor, Julius Caesar, was murdered in 44 BC, sparking a civil war that ended the Republic and led to a long line of emperors. First was Caesar's great-nephew Augustus, who ruled for 40 peaceful years and was declared a god after he died. Tiberius came next, in 14 AD. He conquered parts of Germany, but was a reclusive emperor back home. His successor, Caligula, was known for his cruelty. He enjoyed watching tortures during his feasts. His uncle, Claudius, followed in 41 AD. He started the conquest of Britain and named Nero as his successor. The Julio-Claudian family made Baia their seaside home and built an opulent villa at this spot.
The ancient sources tell us that Baia was called the Little Rome, where the emperors used to stay for their holidays, but also to make important decisions and to meet very important people.
The villa was passed down through the generations to Nero. Ancient writers said he hosted incredible feasts here. Barbara wants to preserve the site and detail all the ruins before the sea claims them.
Underwater is an harsh environment, so archaeological remains at risk. It's a big fight against the marine organism and against the waves, the change of the sea level, and so on.
Southwest of Nero's villa, the divers spot something on the sea floor. As they brush away the silt, an incredible mosaic emerges. In Tivoli, just outside Rome,
Non la vedo.
Non la vedi però la senti coi piedi.
Con le mani così,
Con le
giusto?
mani in alto.
Marco descends into the underground chamber. He hopes to find a lost part of Hadrian's villa below the new floor. It could help reveal if other emperors' palaces were as luxurious as Nero's golden house.
Qui c'è tantissimo materiale edilizio, tantissime tegole. E c'è tantissimo materiale combusto, ossa.
It looks like an entire room that was carelessly backfilled when the new floor was built. Suddenly, mixed in with the rubble, Marco spots pieces of painted plaster.
Quelli molto belli, molto... Aspetta, ne trovo un bellissimo. frammento di affresco. No, è una specie di pendaglio. Sì, adesso te lo porto su. Comunque qui è proprio una miniera di cose, quindi bisogna programmare al prima possibile una rimozione di tutti questi terreni. Allora Benedetta, questo bellissimo con l'incannucciata viene dalla parte bassa del mucchio.
Back above ground, Marco and his colleague Benedetta analyze the frescoes.
Questo è molto diverso come consistenza da quest'altro.
The incredible fresco fragments probably date to Hadrian, and the backfilled room forms a long-lost part of his vast palace.
Noi siamo molto contenti, siamo entusiasti di quello che sta uscendo.
Now, Marco and the team want to excavate the entire space. They will have to be extremely careful. The evidence so far suggests that there will be masses of ancient relics mixed in with the rubble. At the sunken city of Baia, in the Bay of Naples, Barbara's divers investigate the mosaic they found on the sea floor. The strong current has lifted many of its delicate pieces. The divers carefully identify missing tesserae among the sand. Then they use special underwater mortar to reconstruct the 2,000-year-old mosaic, a black and white fish made from pure marble pieces. It was likely the floor of a lavish villa belonging to one of the political elite.
Ogni volta è una scoperta e vedere questi tesori sommersi.
On the boat, Barbara analyzes a larger piece of marble recovered from the sea floor.
We have marble from Africa, from Asia, from Greece, and also from Italy. These structures was decorated with luxury marble coming from all the Roman world.
Discoveries like these reveal the lavish lifestyle of Baia's rich. In the 1st century AD, this spa haven was renowned for overindulgence and debauchery. It was Rome's Sin City and Nero's favorite playground.
He loved Baia. That's why when they decided to build the Domus Aurea in Rome, he had the inspiration of the landscape of Baia.
When Nero built his golden house with a massive artificial lake, he brought Baia and its excesses to Rome for all to witness. Nero's notoriety and the downfall of his Domus Aurea may have begun at Baia. The underwater team continues their investigation eastwards. Soon, a massive structure comes into view, with columned walls nearly 330 feet long and 200 feet wide. Right next to Nero's villa. In Tivoli, Marco and his team painstakingly remove the rubble from the underground room at Hadrian's villa. He identifies a structure emerging from the debris.
C'è una scala che scende di qua, però comunque c'è un livello che scende di qua e un livello che scende di qua.
As they remove the rubble, the features of the ancient room come into view.
Quel muro lì è un muro chiaramente originale, quei mattoni più gialli, e qui vediamo 1, 2 e 3 fori che sono fori per il rivestimento della parete. Sappiamo che queste erano pareti riccamente rivestite di affreschi.
It's not long until more fragments of the precious frescoes emerge.
Guarda.
Che bello.
Fantastico,
Bellissimo.
Ci siamo.
Digging deeper, Marco uncovers more and more fragments,
Bellissimo.
incredibly preserved.
È una cassa del tesoro.
Ah, bellissimo questo, eh? Guarda quanto è bello questo.
Luce, qualcuno per
favore, la luce qua.
Grazie, grazie.
Questa è la testa.
E vai. Sabato non buttato via. 60-70 centimetri minimo pieno di questa roba qua.
Questi sono frammenti eccezionali, eh?
Bravo, bravo.
Dobbiamo festeggiare, dobbiamo festeggiare.
The team continues to pull up precious fragments from the room.
Noi stiamo scoprendo, come dire, un piccolo grande tesoro, un mucchio di affreschi a Villa Adriana, dove gli affreschi non sono così noti. Non è detto che sotto forse troviamo anche degli affreschi ancora attaccati alla parete.
Only a few traces of wall paintings have ever been recovered from Hadrian's villa. But here, sealed under the floor, they have remained hidden from the elements and the eyes of robbers, giving Marco a unique insight.
Quello che esce, questi piccoli frammenti, ci fanno capire il lusso di questo ambiente qua. Troviamo una casa dove il lusso e le capacità tecniche sono assolutamente eccezionali.
The hidden room shows Hadrian too lived in an elaborately decorated palace. So the opulence of Nero's Domus Aurea can't be the only reason it was buried. Darius has also come to Tivoli and the Villa Adriana to look for more clues. There could be more to be found, not from underground, but from above. He sends up a high-definition drone to see the size of the Villa Adriana.
Really getting a grand view of the entire complex here. This is just gorgeous. There's a maritime theater over there, the so-called Greek and Latin libraries, the Hospitalia, all the way over to basically the core of the imperial residence. So there's just so much. They're all just popping out amidst, over 200 acres.
Darius continues his investigation on foot.
I'm underneath now in an entirely man-made construction. What we have here are cells, one after the other, always the same. This was what we'd call the slave corridor, the slave rooms.
Inside the cells, Darius spots a curious feature.
There are brackets inserted on the walls for wooden floors. So actually it was subdivided into mini floors, little mezzanine floors. So we know they're packing in as many people as possible. And in fact, it's known as the Cento Camarelle, the 100 rooms for thousands of slaves that must have worked here, that lived here, that slept here, making the villa work.
With its over 200 acres and thousands of enslaved people, the Villa Adriana was as lavishly decorated as Nero's Domus Aurea, and twice as big.
It is expansive and it is massive, bigger than most cities in the Roman world, but it's outside the city of Rome. Now, if we take a look at the Domus Aurea, you're taking this kind of concept of Hadrian's villa, but you're putting it into the city.
The location of the Domus Aurea could explain why it's now buried, with Nero's reputation rotting with it. Nero built his palace in the center of Rome, claiming a huge area of prime real estate and flaunting his luxurious lifestyle for every Roman to see.
This was just something that had never been seen before and was really something over the top.
In central Rome, near the edge of the Domus Aurea, Maria Teresa is examining the strange find made by one of her team.
And this is the leftover material from the production of something, probably metal, because it's very heavy.
The discovery comes from a lair just above Nero's building here, dating to the time after the destruction of the palace. It is evidence of a change in the way the area was used after Nero. In Nero's day, the Palatine was where the rich and powerful lived.
On the top of the Palatine, there was houses of emperors, because Romulus, the founder, was the first one who lived on the top of the hill, and that's why Augustus and other emperors wanted to live there.
This area in the vibrant heart of Rome was in demand and changed use repeatedly over the centuries. In the dig headquarters, Maria Teresa studies excavation records to explore how Nero managed to build his 125-acre palace complex on this coveted land. She examines a curious lair discovered below his building.
We can see these beautiful marble stairs with black traces on the walls, and also pottery with ashes.
The traces of black charring and ashes point to one thing: a ferocious fire. In 64 AD, 10 years into Nero's reign, a fire started near a chariot racing arena and raged across the city for 6 days. Ancient writers claimed Emperor Nero callously played his lyre as he watched the event unfold. Cramped streets helped the inferno spread, destroying over half the city and clearing enough space for Nero to build his Domus Aurea. Nero accused Christians of starting the fire and gruesomely executed them, allegedly burning some as torches at his garden parties.
We know that the slope of the Palatine burned with the other structures within the fire of 64, and then was the new construction of the Domus Aurea.
Some ancient historians claimed Nero had started and spread the fire deliberately. Modern investigations have since cast doubt on his guilt. Rome was a cramped tinderbox, ready to ignite with any careless spark from countless open fires. Nero even opened public buildings and his own estates as shelters and housed those made homeless. But the rumors of his involvement were fanned by Nero's enemies in the immediate aftermath. Incensed by excess spending and taxation, and now outraged by the building of the Domus Aurea, Nero and his palace were now in peril. In the Bay of Naples, at the sunken city of Baia, Barbara and her team are continuing their investigation of the structure next to Nero's palace. It's a massive villa. On board the dive boat, she analyzes an inscribed lead pipe previously recovered from the complex.
This object is very important for us because thanks to this object we can know the name of the owners of this very important villa.
The inscription on the pipe reads L. Pisoni.
The Pisoni family was a very important family during the reign of Nero.
Gaius Calpurnius Piso was a high-ranking senator, one of Rome's richest and most powerful men. From his villa at Baia, he watched Nero's excesses for 11 years, until the building of the Domus Aurea on the scorched ruins of Rome drove him into action. 1 year after the fire, Piso organized a plot to kill Nero at Baia. One of the conspirators instructed a former servant to sharpen a knife for the assassination. But the suspicious man reported his former master to Nero's secretary, foiling the plot and revealing the 41 conspirators. A vengeful Nero ordered Piso to commit suicide, a noble death in Roman eyes. The others were executed or forced into exile.
Nero discovered them, killed them, and took all the properties of the Pisoni family.
Barbara's investigation at Baia helps show how Nero lost favor with the political elite who despised his indulgent palace. He escaped Piso's plot, but it marked the beginning of the end for Nero, his reputation, and his extravagant Domus Aurea. In central Rome, on the Palatine Hill, Maria Theresa has found more clues that could shed light on the ultimate fate of the emperor's hated building.
We are quite sure that there is a basin because we have a waterproof mortar inside the basin, and we have a lot of scrap materials like metals and glasses. So it probably functioned for the production of this material.
Finding the scrap metal and basin suggests an industrial use for the area, probably a metalworking shop. It's a huge change for a site once next to an imperial palace. In a different part of the site, the team make another discovery.
We have found this incredible stairways that is built later during imperial age. We have different levels inside the building, and bottom level and another floor upstairs. And it connects the lower part of this square and this street with the upper level of the Palatine, probably. We are the first archaeologists who found this stairway, so we are very excited about this.
Maria Theresa recognizes this type of construction.
Something similar was excavated near here in another part of the Palatine, and it was like a great market built under Hadrian.
A change in use of this space, from an imperial building to a public market, could be an important clue to the demise of the Domus Aurea.
It is very interesting that it could be an old market, because Nero wants all this area for himself, for his private old palace. Later emperors destroyed this project of Nero, and they built other structures here, probably with a public function, just to give the Roman citizens what Nero took for himself.
Maria Theresa's work helps prove the Domus Aurea was deliberately buried by later emperors. Her search for more evidence continues. Inside the underground remains of the Domus Aurea, Maria is checking on the progress the conservation team is making.
Maria, qui abbiamo liberato tutta questa figura seduta.
Si vede il panneggio.
Si vede il panneggio. Vedi Maria, qui è uscita tutta la figura femminile.
Bellissimo.
After days of painstaking work, they have managed to recover delicate paintings of human figures and ornate columns. The team still has a lot of work ahead of them. In the humid microclimate inside the Domus Aurea, the fight against its deterioration will continue. But the team's efforts have been successful so far, bringing new sections of Nero's buried palace back into view for the first time in 2,000 years.
Io non ci speravo veramente, perché partendo da questa situazione non speravo di poter recuperare così tanto.
Darius's investigation into Nero's notoriety and the fate of the Domus Aurea finally brings him to Rome's most famous landmark, the Colosseum. He spots a clue, abandoned, in a corner of the Colosseum Square.
So over here you have an inscription, it's a modern inscription, and it says that this outline here is for the base of where the colossal statue of Nero once stood.
This colossal 125 feet tall statue originally stood at the entrance of the Domus Aurea, but was moved to this new location after Nero's death. According to ancient writers, by 68 AD, Nero was so reviled his Praetorian Guard deserted him. Fearing for his life, he fled Rome with just 4 attendants to take refuge in a suburban villa. The Senate declared Nero a public enemy and sentenced him to be beaten to death. When guards finally came to arrest him, Nero begged his private secretary, Epaphroditus, to help him commit suicide. Nero was dead, but his Domus Aurea remained. Darius finds more traces of the old palace around the Colosseum.
So we have right here a bunch of shaved down walls, and we can tell this is Neronian by the building typology, by the kind of bricks. Here, these truncated walls were part of pavilion spaces that then lined the lake that was part of the Domus Aurea complex.
Shortly after Nero's death, the new emperor Vespasian ordered the lake to be drained. He wanted to make way for a new construction, the Colosseum.
That's a bold political statement. It's a powerful political message, placing that very public amphitheater in a place that had previously been occupied by this exaggerated residential complex of Nero, the Domus Aurea.
Vespasian and successive Roman emperors were careful not to flaunt their spectacular wealth. Building by building, they buried Nero's golden house and gave central Rome back to the Roman people. The magnificent palace was buried, leaving its golden rooms and precious frescoes to rot, alongside Nero's reputation.
It's really hard nowadays to rehabilitate the character and the reign of Nero. He did obviously bear the brunt of people's anger and displeasure when he created his massive Domus Aurea. He ends up dying alone. Doesn't have much of a great legacy.
Though there is some evidence Nero was popular with the common people of Rome, his reputation was forged by historians writing in the reign of his immediate successors. They may have tried to curry their favor with negative depictions of him.
I almost feel sorry for Nero. Almost. Ultimately, I think, the history books do judge him fairly because his way of running the government and so forth weren't really taking Rome in the direction of stability and continued success, but we're still kind of enamored with this larger-than-life persona.
This season, our archaeologists have unearthed new evidence about Rome's most notorious emperor and the fate of his infamous palace. Their combined downfall was due to Nero's taste for immeasurable luxury, the sheer scale of his golden palace, and his land grab of the smoldering ruins of burned-down Rome. Their work will continue, and their discoveries will shed more light on Rome's most reviled emperor. In Italy, deep in the countryside, archaeologists have made the discovery of a lifetime. A long-lost Roman amphitheater.
Madonna.
Va tutto sotto, sì.
Their excavation reveals an opening that was buried deep in the ground for over 1,000 years.
Vado a prendere una torcia.
Now the team dares to enter the tunnel in a quest to uncover its hidden secrets.
Madonna.
The Colosseum. in the heart of Rome. Today, this monumental building is an enduring symbol of the Roman Empire. Famous for its spectacular gladiator contests of brutality and death. Its scale and ambition was legendary. Now, an international team of archaeologists is investigating how this megastructure became so crucial to the Roman Empire.
It was initially a Roman amphitheatre, and it becomes the symbol of Rome. I have to ask the question, why?
The weathered facade of today shows little trace of the marble that originally adorned this colossus. Statues of gods and goddesses once stood in the arches. This icon, completed in 80 AD, seated 50,000 spectators. It was a gift to the people from Emperor Vespasian and his son Titus. Romans gathered alongside the emperor in his imperial box under a retractable awning to witness the greatest and bloodiest entertainment of ancient Rome, the gladiator fights.
It was built to impress, and it still does.
British archaeologist Valerie Higgins has made the city of Rome her home and has a lifelong passion for its ancient civilization. She's exploring how the Colosseum, an arena of entertainment, became so central to the very idea of Rome. Valerie wants to investigate what went on behind the scenes of the amphitheatre's spectacular shows. She heads down to the area beneath the arena floor, once a warren of dark tunnels, to look for clues.
There are lots of these holes surrounded by white stone all over the basement of the Colosseum. And they're quite intriguing. They must have a purpose. And that purpose has to be something that's happening up on the arena floor.
Valerie hunts for more evidence in the surviving structures.
They've cut a groove here. You can see that clearly in the rock. So there is something that is going up and down at this point. It looks like there's been some machinery here.
Everywhere there are traces of the mechanisms that powered the dazzling shows up above.
These stones are at a strange angle. The only reason I can think of why they would be there is that this was a ramp into the arena. It gives you a sense of how the Romans created magic in the spectacle. Because up through the ramp could come animals or people appearing as if by magic in the arena.
Expertly designed pulleys and cages delivered wild animals into the arena to astonish the crowds. The spectacle began with a hunt. Hundreds of wild animals from across the Roman Empire were released and slaughtered by trained hunters. Next were the gruesome executions. Many convicted criminals were mauled to death by wild animals. And then, the stage was set for the grand finale. Gladiators fighting head to head. The Romans went to extraordinary lengths to entertain the Colosseum's vast crowds. To explore why, Valerie's going deeper behind the scenes. At Volterra in Tuscany, 130 miles north of Rome, a team of archaeologists is unearthing an extraordinary discovery. One that might help solve the puzzle of why the Colosseum was so central to the Roman Empire. Elena Sorge is the team leader.
La cosa che mi piace di più dell'essere archeologa è l'odore della polvere, della terra scavata, ha un profumo particolare.
For over a millennium, no one knew what lay hidden here under the grass. Until now. Buried in the ground is a long-lost look-alike Colosseum.
Appena mi sono resa conto della portata della scoperta, non ho dormito per una settimana e devo dire è la cosa più bella che mi sia mai accaduta.
Finding a totally unknown, unexcavated amphitheater here is one of the discoveries of the century.
Let's go ahead and kick this one off.
All right.
This ancient virgin site, untouched by previous excavations, has attracted an international team.
It's good to go.
Out of the scene.
Shifting thousands of tons of soil, they're unearthing the old arena, the audience seating, and long-lost hidden treasures. Archaeologist Valeria D'Acchino grew up in the region and works alongside Elena.
This amphitheater disappeared during the centuries, so we are awakening a big stone giant.
And there's a mystery. The ancient people of this region weren't Roman. They were rivals called Etruscans. This was one of the last areas of the Italian peninsula to fall under Roman rule. Why was a Roman amphitheater built here at all? The team knows that the best way to find out why it was built is to find out when it was built. Any new discovery could add a crucial piece to the puzzle. The team has found a vase deep in the ground. It has survived in one piece for at least 1,500 years.
Eva.
They call Eva Pianini, the lead restorer, to examine the find. They are looking for any clue that might allow them to precisely date the pottery. Eva sees something beneath the mud.
There is something strange in his face.
Valeria arrives to take a closer look. Could it be a special stamp that might help date it?
It's a fingerprint.
The ancient potter has left their mark.
No stamp.
No stamp, no date, but still a human touch from across the centuries. Eva sends the vase to a lab off-site for further analysis. The hunt for clues continues. On another part of the site, there's a sudden commotion. The team uncovers an unexpected opening. Elena races to the scene.
Andiamo veloce, so che devo scendere.
Madonna.
Che la tieni? Sì?
Poi si mette di sopra.
Elena is the first to enter this tunnel in over 1,000 years.
Ok? Un vano con altri 2 archi.
At Richborough, in southern England, another buried Roman amphitheatre is being excavated. Tony Wilmot is the lead archaeologist on the dig.
It's exciting to excavate because it's the one building type that the Romans invented themselves without pinching it from the Greeks.
Tony is the first to excavate the amphitheatre in 150 years.
We're here to try and understand the amphitheatre, try and understand everything about it, the date, the structure, the way it's built.
Most of the huge ancient structure remains hidden under this vast mound. Over the years, debris and earth have collapsed into the arena, filling it 9 feet deep. After weeks of digging, the team succeeds in exposing the arena wall. On examination, it's clear that it's made from chalk block. This is unlike other Roman walls in the area, which were made from more durable stone. Historian Paul Patterson is responsible for the work at Richborough. He has come to examine the arena wall.
It's something of a surprise, the materials that they've used. We can see it was very clearly constructed of chalk blocks, quarried locally. Materials that were easily available, ready to hand, rather than having to go some great distance, might indicate that the construction is quite early.
It was here at Richborough that the Romans invaded Britain in 43 AD. It now seems likely that the amphitheatre may have been built not long after. It's a major discovery for the dig. But like the Romans before them, the team must contend with the English weather. It's raining hard. If the soil's wet, the team risks damaging fragments of history underfoot. There's no choice but to stop and take cover.
The rain has now seeped through, and we flooded basically in the deeper areas down in the arena, which means that we have to bail it out. We'll get there. This is the romance of archaeology in action.
In Rome, Valerie continues her investigation in a strange structure discovered alongside the Colosseum.
This is, I would say, residential quarters for the gladiators.
There's something here that catches Valerie's eye. The remains of a semicircular wall.
It looks like a curved arena, which is the same shape as the arena in the Colosseum.
The shape is a clue to the function of this large space.
It's a mini Colosseum. This must have been where they were training and preparing for these very complex games. What this arena here shows us is these were not just games that were thrown together where you get 2 guys to come out and fight. These were games that took a lot of choreography and a lot of preparation.
Gladiator fights began in the 4th century BC. They were performed at funerals to honor the dead. In the 1st century BC, Julius Caesar supersized the ritual with games of hundreds of fighters and wild animals to commemorate his relatives. The games later developed into a state-funded industry, with special schools to train the gladiators, and amphitheaters for audiences in their tens of thousands. The Colosseum, the biggest ever ancient amphitheater, was built by order of Emperor Vespasian in the 1st century AD. Why did he want this colossus and its games? Valerie continues her search into the streets of Rome. North of Rome, in Volterra, Elena emerges from her first exploration of the tunnel at the newly discovered amphitheater. On another part of the same site, American architectural technologists Paul Aubin and Mark Dietrich are capturing the ancient structure with a state-of-the-art laser scanner.
That was all filled in.
It was all filled
up to that height.
Yeah.
The laser bounces off every inch of this ancient structure to create a digital map of the site. This means the team can study it in forensic detail.
You can't describe the feeling of being really inside of a monument that has just been discovered and is just literally emerging out of the ground.
The team hopes to find clues to unlock the mysteries of this site. When and why it was built.
Perfect.
Their scans help to recreate the structure in its prime. Volterra's ruins today form a section of an oval-shaped amphitheater. Sandstone arches once supported the seating for 10,000 spectators around a central arena. The team believes that the builders cut part of the structure into the bedrock of a hill and dug vaulted galleries connecting the arena to stairs around the outside. As the pieces of the puzzle come together, a whole amphitheater is emerging, with each new discovery adding to the picture of a mini Colosseum.
Finally get to go into this tunnel.
Yeah, really anxious to see what it looks like in there.
Mark and Paul are keen to scan the tunnel first entered by Elena.
All right, watch your footing here.
The entrance is now cleared and ready for their investigations.
Tell this hasn't seen the light of day in a long time.
Wow.
Look at that.
Their high-tech, high-precision equipment measures up to 2 million data points per second.
I just can't believe this.
Spectacular. Wow. Look how tight the joints are in those arches.
That's incredible.
Definitely try and get in there too.
What do you think, Paul?
Maybe if we lower the scanner all the way, we can still get a nice shot in there.
Let's do it.
Right.
Let's see what the scanner saw. Oh, wow.
Wow, there's another arch over there.
I didn't know that
see
other
that
arch was back there.
I'm just wondering how many other passages must be back there.
That is remarkable.
The scans reveal a network of unknown hidden passageways that could help the team decipher when and why this amphitheater was built. In Rome, Valerie is working with local pilot Marco Giordano to launch a drone mounted with a high-definition camera. She hopes a fresh perspective will help her investigation. She wants to identify the site of the Theatre of Pompey, built 100 years before the Colosseum.
I can see the buildings today are following the same shape as the Theatre of Pompey.
The theatre no longer exists, but it was originally built in the form of a semicircle. Spotting the telltale curve in the streets below, Valerie sets out to find the location.
Well, I can see from the shape of this building that this must be on the seating of the Theatre of Pompey. You can see this from the way that it's curved and also from the way that everything is sloping backwards. So underneath our feet here, there would have been steps going up that would have been the Roman seating for the stage, which was over on this side.
The ancient theatre was built by the Roman politician and general Pompey in 55 BC. It was the first permanent theatre in Rome, built not in wood, but in stone. A vehicle for Pompey's political ambition, he used it to win popular support.
The Theatre of Pompey really demonstrates to us just how connected politics and entertainment is. It's not just about going to theatre performances. This is about political power.
Valerie thinks the Colosseum, a theatre for gladiatorial games, was also built to win popular support.
This is a really interesting superimposition of the Theatre of Pompey on the modern street plan of Rome. If you put it close to a plan of the Colosseum, these are quite similar dimensions.
The theatre and amphitheatre are both huge but different shapes. One is a semicircle, the other a near full circle.
The amphitheatre is a little bit like two theatres put together.
Doubling the size of their Colosseum suggests Emperors Vespasian and Titus wanted a huge audience for their games. Valerie's investigations are closing in on the true purpose of the giant amphitheatre. In Richborough, England. Now the rainstorm has passed. Tony and Paul are checking progress at the newly exposed wall.
It's really come up.
Oh, it's really come up, yeah. Yeah, and it hasn't been damaged by the weather either, happily.
They can make out traces of ancient paint on plastered walls.
We've got blues and red and yellow. The sort of curves of that red over there. I wouldn't be surprised if that was just the last vestiges of a figure.
This is a real surprise to me.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But to find it plastered and painted.
Yeah, if you'd asked me whether it was likely, you know, before we started, I'd say, yeah, never in a million years.
They believe they've uncovered a fresco where the paint has been applied to wet plaster.
Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought of that.
Nor me.
An amphitheatre with a fresco like this is a rare find.
There's none in Britain.
No, there's none in Britain. A pattern, decorative, and an arena wall, it is of international importance.
Walls in the Colosseum itself were painted too. Brilliant reds, blues, and greens. The painted arena wall reveals how much care the Romans lavished on the Richborough Amphitheatre. It's new evidence of how important this amphitheatre was to the Romans who built it. But within hours, it starts raining again. They must act fast to protect the newly exposed fresco.
Well, once again, we've had to cover the cover the walls, cover the chalk walls and the wall painting. So we're under blue tarps again.
For the second time, the weather forces the team to down tools. Valerie returns to the Colosseum to continue her investigation into why it became so important to Rome.
You're always kind of following the curve around.
The amphitheatre was built as an oval megastructure, measuring 1/3 of a mile in circumference. Spectators could enter via 80 archways.
I can see numbers written in Roman numerals. This one is XXX11, 32, and then going along XXX1V, 34. What this is indicating, I think, has to be the number that was on the ticket that you got in order to enter the arena.
As a spectator, you'd be just one of thousands. Unlike the half circle of the old Roman theatre of Pompey, this was a full wraparound arena. Audience capacity more than doubled from 20,000 to 50,000.
Once inside, you would be directed to your section of seating, but you didn't get to choose what it was. As you go further up to the top of the amphitheatre, it gets steeper. And you go along dark corridors and you come out into a section of seating which has been assigned to you.
Seats were allocated according to social status. The place with the worst view was right at the top.
It may well have been standing room only, and the people who stood there were the slaves and the women.
Those with the greatest status sat closest to the emperor in his imperial box. First were the elite senators. Sitting in the marble rows above them were a noble rank of Roman knights known as the equites. Above them were groups of soldiers, adolescent boys with tutors, and married men, with other ordinary citizens of Rome. In the highest levels were Rome's lower classes, enslaved people and poorer citizens, along with the women and children.
When you went to the games at the amphitheatre, you really were, in a very literal sense, put in your place.
The massive wraparound theatre had another hidden function. Engineering a 360-degree space put everyone in full view of everyone else. It's not just the gladiators who were put on show. It was the audience, too.
It was a very socially reinforcing act to go to the amphitheatre because you really understood your place in society.
It was a social performance, one that reinforced the hierarchy of Roman society. The Colosseum wasn't built simply to entertain the people. It was built to keep them under control. In Volterra, Mark and Paul review their laser scans in 3D.
You can really start to see
the shape of
the overall shape.
I mean, look at that. This was all just a big grass field.
The 3D imaging allows them to identify the underlying engineering. Not just the tunnels, but the whole amphitheatre.
We're really getting a nice hint of the elliptical shape now.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's so much more clear now, the geometry of this amazing monument.
The digital data reveals patterns not obvious to the naked eye. The hope is that the hidden geometry will hold the key to understanding when and why this amphitheatre was built. But Mark and Paul's investigations don't stop here.
Oh, this scan position is absolutely perfect. It's going to allow us to get the tops of these walls over here.
This is the ancient theatre at Volterra, not far from the newly discovered amphitheatre. It was built at the end of the 1st century BC. The scans of this building can be compared with the scans of the amphitheatre. Analysis of the theatre's seating and the amphitheatre's arena suggests they may have been built by the same architect for the Caecinas, a local clan not of Roman but Etruscan origin. In the 1st century BC, with Volterra under Roman rule, Aulus Caecina wrote a tirade against Caesar and was banished. But over the next 100 years, Caecinas became renowned senators in Rome. In Volterra, Caecinas displayed their grand ambitions with lavish Roman buildings, the theatre, and now it seems, the amphitheatre too. Finally, with the help of the 3D scans, the team is solving the mystery of when and why this ancient structure was built. The evidence suggests that it was constructed around the same time and for the same reason as the theatre, as a testimony to Roman power in the reign of Emperor Augustus.
An amphitheatre is a symbol of the Roman power. They are very important from a political point of view. These kind of buildings are very important for us to understand the relationship within Rome.
The amphitheatre was more than just a spectacular building, an arena for gladiatorial games. It was a symbol of Rome and Romanness. Not only in Italy, but in places like Richborough, on the outer reaches of the empire. In Richborough, England, Tony and his team are investigating why this amphitheatre was built 800 miles from Rome. Battling the weather, the team is working on the plastered and painted arena wall when they begin to uncover a puzzling structure alongside it. Once it's fully dug out, Tony finds a clue to its function.
What we have is a slight stain here, a nice straight line against the mortar floor. This is probably the base of a timber frame door of this entrance.
Evidence of a door onto the arena leads Tony to an exciting conclusion.
What this is a carcer. It's a place where animals or people waiting to go into the arena would be incarcerated, where we get the word from. It's a chamber off the back of the arena wall. This is really the waiting room for anything that's going to die in the arena. This would be a very, very grim place. This is where, you know, the fear would click in before that door rose and you went to meet whatever it was in front of you in the arena.
This significant find reveals how even many hundreds of miles from Rome, spectacle is still key.
You've got people coming and going from the rest of the Roman Empire, and this is what they might expect. These are people who are soldiers, they're traders, they're imperial officials, and they would want to have, you know, those those aspects of Roman culture that they could get anywhere else in the empire.
This amphitheatre, built soon after the invasion of Britain in 43 AD, is the vanguard of empire, not just for the conquerors, but for the vanquished too.
It's about spreading the idea of the Roman way, and the way they do that is that they try and convince the conquered populations that this new way of life is a better way of life. The amphitheatre and the things that went on in an amphitheatre is one way of doing that. We see this all over the Roman Empire.
230 amphitheatres, mini colosseums, have been discovered across the empire. Built between the 1st century BC and the 4th century AD, they stretched from England to Africa. Some of them still stand at Pompeii and Verona in Italy, at Arles in France, Italica in Spain, El Jem in Tunisia, and Pula in Croatia. Their forms of entertainment were always the same, a way for the Roman rulers to spread their Roman values. Enemies of Rome faced public execution. They were crucified, burnt at the stake, or mauled by wild animals. Gladiators wore armor inspired by ancient enemies and mythical Roman characters. They fought with different weapons and armor to show off Roman values of courage and valor. Even facing certain death, a gladiator would be expected to die bravely. The amphitheatre Romanized its conquered peoples. But Rome needed Romanizing too. And this would be the task of the greatest amphitheatre of them all, the Colosseum. All paths lead back to the Colosseum, and Valerie is at the crux of her investigation.
Rome was the centre of a huge empire, and like all huge empires, it has a lot of migration to its centre. So most of the people who are sitting around this arena probably originated somewhere else. But the one thing that kind of made them Roman, that actually created a feeling of Romanness, is that they sat and watched this spectacle.
At the Colosseum, the emperor made sure he personified Rome. He had his grand entrance, the Imperial Gate, and he sat in his imperial box for all to see.
This is the best view in the arena, and it's not only the best view, it's the best place to be viewed. We should be in no doubt that it was putting on games like this that was really crucial to the emperor keeping power.
The genius of Emperor Vespasian and his son, builders of the Colosseum, was to harness the gladiatorial games to the power of the emperor. But it wouldn't last forever. In Volterra, as the team pieces together the story of the once buried amphitheatre, Valeria uncovers a mysterious structure.
This is an opening, for sure, probably a window. Here you can see the contact point between these blocks, and it means that this opening has been filled in.
This clear line between the original and new stone shows the window has been bricked up. It points to a radical shift in the amphitheatre's history.
This testifies probably the phase in which this building has been abandoned, maybe at the beginning of the 5th century AD.
The beginning of the 5th century AD is around the time the gladiator games were banned throughout the Roman Empire. Was this blocked-up window the beginning of the end for the amphitheatre? In 313 AD, Emperor Constantine outlawed the persecution of Christians, and his reforms began to change the games. He banned crucifixion for convicted criminals, but allowed gladiator fights to persist. In 404 AD, a Christian monk tried to stop a gladiatorial contest, but was stoned to death by the crowd. It's said that the sight turned the heart of the Christian emperor Honorius, who then banned the games altogether. In a new Christian era, the Colosseum came to be seen in a different light.
This inscription commemorates the Christians who were killed under the Roman Empire. This became a place that symbolized all of the Christian martyrs who died. It symbolizes the inhumanity of what was happening in the arena when people were being executed in this horrific way.
The Roman Empire was the most powerful on earth. And this amphitheatre, the magnificent Colosseum, was its monument. Archaeologists are discovering that an amphitheatre symbolized Rome wherever it was built. From the provinces to the outer corners of empire, their excavations are revealing how amphitheatres came to stand for the might of Rome, for social order, military valor, and imperial power. Symbolism so powerful that amphitheatres represent the Roman Empire to this day.
You see this relatively tiny opening? It leads under the women's bathing rooms.
Okay, come on, Mario.
Beneath Pompeii's oldest bathhouse, cavers are venturing deep into a miraculously preserved space that remained hidden for nearly 2,000 years.
I'm actually not sure how long they stay there. We'll see how long they survive.
Oh, look, down there, there's a bat.
They're searching for clues to life and death in the Roman Empire.
What do you think is written here?
I think it's a stump.
Pompeii, an ancient city 130 miles south of Rome. In AD 79, Mount Vesuvius, just 6 miles away, erupted explosively, smothering the entire area beneath millions of tons of volcanic ash and rock. 17 centuries later, archaeologists rediscovered a city frozen in time. But even after almost 300 years of excavation, a third of Pompeii's streets remain unearthed. Today, archaeologists from across the world are digging through the debris, uncovering surprising new evidence for what it was like to live and die at the height of the Roman Empire.
For an archaeologist, staying in Pompeii is a very special moment. The possibility to touch the real life 2,000 years ago.
Much of what we know of the Roman world is through the lives of those at the top, emperors, senators and generals living in their vast villas and palaces. But the great majority of those who lived in the Roman world weren't rich at all. What was Pompeii like lower down the social order, for the middle classes or enslaved people? We're following a team of archaeologists excavating Pompeii in search of the real stories of these hidden lives.
Every day we discover new things in Pompeii and help to understand the Roman culture in every part of the world.
Buried up to 20 feet beneath volcanic debris, archaeologists have unearthed a bustling metropolis. Homes for some 15,000 people in a coastal hub of trade and culture. In the east, archaeologists discover an arena for gladiator fights. And in the west, they unearth 2 theaters. They uncover temples dedicated to 9 different gods and emperors, and a forum, the heart of business and political affairs. The excavation of perfectly preserved Pompeii reveals Roman life in the raw. Today, an international team of archaeologists is digging at one of the most complete Roman bathhouses in the world. The Stabian Baths.
Good morning. Buongiorno. Come state? Everything fine?
Yeah, yesterday we...
German archaeologist Monika Trumper first came to Pompeii aged 15 on a family holiday. It sparked the fascination of a lifetime.
I always wanted to excavate here. This has been the dream site to excavate. I really like digging in the earth and cleaning things. I do not like cleaning things at home, but I like cleaning things on archaeological sites.
Monika's team is on a mission to explore the hidden world of the Roman bathhouse.
And as always, we are running out of time and there's still so much to do.
A visit to the baths was part of the Roman daily routine. Bathers would first remove their clothing, then smear their skin with olive oil. The bathing session began with exercise to work up a healthy sweat. Romans didn't use soap. Instead, they scraped off the oil, sweat and dirt with a tool called a strigil. Then bathed in rooms at different temperatures, heated by a hypercaust, a marvel of Roman engineering. Hot air from a furnace circulated under the floor and between the walls to heat rooms up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Pompeii's Stabian baths were in use for around 200 years before Vesuvius's eruption froze them in the state we see today. The team is digging to solve a mystery. How did a visit to the baths change over time?
We've been studying the Stabian bath because we are interested in the development of bathing culture in Pompeii.
Their quest begins behind the scenes.
Buongiorno. Right now, what you see is a service room. You see all kinds of installations that serve for the bath. I'm standing on a channel. You see another channel behind me. So these are all installations belonging somehow to particularly the water management and also the heating system. It was a room that the bathers were not supposed to ever see or enter. So it was only for the slaves.
Monika and joint excavation leader Marco Giglio from the University of Naples L'Orientale are digging into dirt that predates the eruption of AD 79.
We hope to find also other things, not only beautiful objects, but something useful for the chronology for dating in this space.
Dig member Satoshi Higuchi spots a glint of metal in the dirt.
Wow. Should pick. Yeah.
I can't see it. What is it? Oh, yeah, I see it now. Oh, wow. What do you think it might be?
This could be some kind of hairpin.
I guess yes, because it's so thin.
Yes.
The thin needle, something you would stick into your hair. Look at this. There's more of it?
Oh no, it's a fibula.
Yeah,
Fibula.
and this is part of the fibula then?
Yeah.
So this is the lower part of the fibula, wow. They used to fix clothes, they used this to fix clothes, and actually, if I remember correctly, this is the first one we find here at all in the Stadion Bath.
The ornate clothespin is a direct connection to a Pompeian living 2,000 years ago.
It's really exciting and really happy to have found it, and I hope I can find more interesting things to understand this bath.
Very interesting find, very interesting. Now we'll continue to excavate this layer.
All the evidence the team has found suggests this was not always a service room, but was once a public walkway known as a porticus.
Our hypothesis is that originally it was a porticus and not a service room, and only later, when they improved or changed the bath, they would have transformed it into such a service room.
When did the layout of the baths change, and why? To find out, Monica will need to explore deep into an unseen world. Just outside Pompeii's city walls, Spanish archaeologist Llorenç Alapont is leading another pioneering excavation.
I think for all archaeologists, digging Pompeii is a dream.
It's estimated 2,000 Pompeians perished in the eruption. Their tragic deaths have made Pompeii world famous. But the frozen figures reveal almost nothing of these people's life stories. For greater insight, today Llorenç is excavating the tombs of Pompeians who died before the eruption. His team has removed tons of volcanic debris to reach new and uncharted tombs.
When we started to work here, all this area was completely covered for these pumice stones that cover completely the city.
The size of each freshly unearthed tomb gives a first clue to the occupants.
Here we are in this tomb on the podium, and of course it's a very rich person that built this very big tomb.
Inscriptions can reveal further fascinating information about the lives of the tomb occupants. But Llorenç's ultimate goal is to unearth what lies inside the tombs.
Our project is try to find these remains, the human remains, because we are studying the archaeology of death.
It's difficult to discover forensic detail of the Roman dead due to the standard funeral rites of the time. When a Roman citizen died, relatives put a coin in the deceased's mouth to pay for safe passage to the underworld. By law, they had to lay the body to rest outside the city limits. Rich families hired musicians and professional mourners to lead the procession. At the necropolis, they burned the body on a pyre and stored the ashes and the coin in an urn to keep in the family tomb. Romans even cremated their emperors, but they burned Julius Caesar's pyre in public inside Rome's city limits. The mourners' passions ran so hot they almost burnt down the Forum. Llorenç and his team are hunting for cremation urns, but finding human ashes among tons of volcanic ashes is no easy task. They've just unearthed this tomb, right next to the main gateway into Pompeii, built in an eye-catching spot.
If you are rich, you choose the most important gate in the city, and of course you want to build your tomb in front of this gate. So everyone who pays in front, they never forget this person. What we found inside was really exciting.
In the southern region of the city is a residential area known today as Insula 17.
Now guys, today we're starting in the two areas to continue the excavation inside in the layers that we find in the last days. Okay? Now we go.
Archaeologist Mario Grimaldi is part of a team from the University of Bologna that is investigating the lives of middle-class people at the height of the Roman Empire. The volcanic blanket over Pompeii preserved its public spaces, its cemeteries, its baths, and its grand buildings. But it also preserved over 1,000 ordinary private homes. These rarely survive elsewhere, so Pompeii offers a unique opportunity for archaeologists.
In Pompeii, we have the possibility to understand the real life, the people that lived in these houses, with the material, the artifacts that these people had in her hand before the eruption. It's important for us to understand this society, these people that lived in this area, like a middle-class people in the society.
Beneath the street that runs alongside the houses, the team makes a discovery.
We have a water pipe. Now we're cleaning this water pipe. It's very interesting for us. The water pipe is a connection from the aqueduct to the water for the fresh water.
Roman plumbing was the envy of the ancient world. Networks of underground lead pipes channeled water from aqueducts along city streets. Most residents collected their water from roadside fountains, but richer homeowners could go one step further.
If I want in my private house the fresh water, I pay with my money the connection to the aqueduct. If you are lucky, it's possible that we find the stamp of the owner.
But as the team searches, something extraordinary begins to appear in the same trench that could give an even bigger insight into these inhabitants' lives.
Okay, guy, what do you find?
We actually find a scout.
Oh, amazing.
In their quest to investigate the occupant of this large tomb, Urence's team hits the jackpot.
In front of this tomb, we found inscription who tell us the owner was Marco Venerio Secundio. This tomb, this discovery, is one of the most important discoveries in my career.
The size and location of Marcus Venerius Secundio's tomb shows that by his death, he must have been a prominent figure in Pompeii. But what Urence unearthed beside the plaque was a complete surprise. The tomb was revealed to be a walled family enclosure. In one corner, Urence found a small tombstone. Beneath it, an urn containing the cremated ashes of a woman. Then the team spotted a sealed door leading to a burial chamber containing Marcus Venerius Secundio's skeleton, still sporting hair and part of his left ear. He was buried, not burnt. An unparalleled opportunity to discover more about an individual life and death in Pompeii.
This is the best preserved body ever found in Pompeii. We were very surprised when we found this body buried and not cremated, because everyone, all bodies in Pompeii are cremated. He's the only one buried in Pompeii.
There are even hints Marcus may have been embalmed after death. Scraps of textile found among the remains may be wrappings to help preserve his body. As soon as the remains were photographed, the team rushed them into cold storage.
Now the body is inside one fridge at 3 degrees because we want to preserve all this organic material. Now we can do analysis, genetic analysis of these remains.
Wear on the teeth, alongside other signs of aging on the skeleton, suggest Marcus lived to at least 60 years old. Urenz hopes further analysis will reveal more about his origins, where he grew up, and perhaps how he died. But starting from the plaque on Marcus's tomb, Urenz wants to piece together key parts of his life story.
Marco Venerius Colonia Libertus. So descriptions say he was first a slave of the city, but after he becomes a free man, Libertus, so he got the freedom.
The inscription and the tomb location reveal that by the time of his death, Marcus was a prominent citizen in Pompeii. Next, Urenz wants to find out how Marcus gained his freedom and his wealth, and what his rise says about life in the Roman Empire. At the Stabian Baths, Monica is following in the footsteps of bathers 2,000 years ago.
This is the final room of the women's suite. It's the caldarium, the hot room.
And the baths weren't just somewhere for citizens to get clean.
We have ancient literary sources that, complain about the noises coming from baths. It's not like one of our, luxury spas where you have quiet, music and so on. And it must have been really, really, really noisy, really loud.
Archaeological evidence indicates that the Stabian Baths served multiple purposes. More than simply being a place to get clean, they were a vital social hub. The main place where Romans caught up with friends or discussed casual business. Monica wants to identify the technology that was key to this social function.
So this is the immersion pool for the women. It was heated from below by the floor heating. It was heated from the back and the sides by the wall heating. And then it has one additional really intriguing feature. You really have to kneel down in order to appreciate this. It's a half circular container made out of bronze, and it's closed at the back and open here in the front. And so the water constantly goes in there, and this thing is right above the hottest part of the fireplace, so right next to the fire, so to speak. And so therefore it always heats the cooling water, and then the hot water comes out again. And this helps additionally to keep the water warm.
The hot water container is called a testudo. It's named for its shape. Testudo in Latin means tortoise.
They are unfortunately rarely preserved because the metal is very precious and was usually rubbed out in antiquity or any time later. So this example here is particularly intriguing because it's fully preserved. It is so rare and is so exciting.
This is clever Roman technology, maintaining the bath water at a constant, pleasurable temperature, so up to half a dozen women could relax and socialize.
It's particularly important to get as much information as possible of such a well-preserved example from all sides.
Exploring the testudo in detail may also give insight into how the bath served as a highly sociable space. But there is a problem.
I can kind of crawl inside from the pool because the opening is very, very narrow and the channel is narrow.
To examine the precious testudo properly, Monica needs a different approach. Just outside Pompeii's city walls, another team is exploring underground. Archaeologist Luana Toniolo has helped excavate 20 feet of volcanic rock and ash to reach a small room, part of a much larger villa.
This is our really latest discovery. As you can see, we are still working with it. So for us, it's really exciting, and every day there's something new. Over there you can see the window from where the volcanic ash entered and covered the objects in this room and actually preserved it.
Ever since excavations began in Pompeii nearly 300 years ago, diggers have found skeletons entombed in the volcanic ash. The flesh of the dead has long since decomposed, leaving only a body-spaced shape surrounding the bones. By pouring plaster into the cavity, the archaeologists are able to recreate the original body shape.
We are still using the same technique more than 1 century ago because it's really the best technique.
This team is using plaster to capture the original shape of other organic objects. They wait for the plaster to set, then very carefully scrape away the surrounding ash.
We don't know what we are going to see. When we pour the plaster in the holes, and what we found, in this case, is the bed.
Not just one, but 3 beds, complete with blankets, and an array of bedside furniture and storage containers.
We can see 3 beds made of wood. These beds are really simple. You can see that they are made of vertical piece of wood.
3 people shared this small room. The basic furniture and the single small window suggest that they were among the poorest of Pompeii.
It was used as a room where to sleep and relax, but at the same time is a storage room, because there you can see storage containers that were used in Roman times to trade food, wine, olive. The other very important object that we can find in this room is this particular object. That is the part of the chariot that was used to link the chariot to the horses.
Incredibly, the plaster cast here reveals a rope lashing.
Questi sono tutti laccetti che tenevano fermi, forse c'era una rottura all'interno del legno e tenevano legati.
The evidence has prompted Pompeii archaeologists to call this the Room of the Slaves. It is the most complete example of such a room ever discovered in the Roman Empire.
This room is very important for us, for the archaeology, for the historians, because we can see actually how slaves and poor people lived.
There would have been several hundred rooms like this in and around Pompeii. It's exactly the sort of place where Marcus Venerius Secundio may have started his life. But as Marcus's life shows, enslavement wasn't necessarily a life sentence in the Roman Empire. In ancient Rome, enslaved people were a commodity, auctioned at a market. Those that were unskilled could be worth the annual salaries of 2 foot soldiers. Some had tags attached to their necks as proof of ownership in case they fled. Those that were educated could be put to work as accountants or secretaries. They had higher status and so were paid for their duties. Enslaved people could use their money to buy their freedom, acquiring Roman citizenship in a formal ceremony. As a symbol of their liberty, they wore a felt cap called a pileus. Marcus's tomb and inscription reveals he became a wealthy man. Urens wants to know how he bought his way out of enslavement. At the Stabian Baths, Monica is venturing deeper into the incredible unseen Roman world preserved at Pompeii.
This is kind of the heart of the bath. This is a service section and the heating system. But what exactly this heating system looked like, we do not know, and we really want to explore. It's quite narrow to get into, it's quite dangerous.
Monica works with a team of speleologists, specialist cavers, to venture where she can't.
Buongiorno, Mauro, Mario, thanks.
Monica hopes the cavers can find evidence of how and when the baths were modified.
We do not know whether the whole heating system was remodeled or belongs to an older period. So I'm really excited and looking forward to pictures.
Mauro traces the route the scorching hot air would have taken into the heating system 2,000 years ago. He's one of few to venture into this dangerous void since Pompeii was buried in volcanic rock.
I'm actually not sure how long they stay there. We'll see how long they survive.
Urience's investigation into the life of Marcus Venerius Secundio has brought him to the western edge of Pompeii. Marcus's tomb inscription states he worked as a custodian, looking after the Temple of Venus.
This is what I'm looking for. This is the original floor of the Temple of Venice.
Romans worshipped many gods and had many temples in their honor. But Venus was the chief deity and protector of Pompeii. Natural disasters have sadly reduced Pompeii's largest sacred site to rubble. Urience hunts for any remains of the temple's inner sanctum that would have contained the statue of Venus.
Here in the temple, we preserve the gate system. Here was Marcus who was opening these massive doors in the Temple of Venice.
Only the stones beneath the doorway remain, but Urience suspects Marcus would have guarded this inner sanctum.
The temple was not always open, so when the temple was closed, people come here and lift their offers. And probably Marcus Venerius came to collect them, to bring them to the temple.
Working in Pompeii's most hallowed temple would allow Marcus to mingle among Pompeii's elite. He was likely to have been rewarded for his work, perhaps through tips or donations.
Of course, the custodian of this temple was very popular, and he has a very good reputation in Pompeii.
The wealth and high status that Marcus gained at the temple may have allowed him to buy his freedom. Once he'd escaped enslavement, Marcus's life took on a truly dramatic twist. Pompeii's latest discoveries are opening up a new window into everyday life in the Roman Empire. Pompeii is much more than a city divided into wealthy elites and their downtrodden servants. This was a society where you could rise out of enslavement, and citizens of all classes relaxed in communal baths. At Insula 17, Mario's team has found a buried skull.
We don't know which animal it is.
What's intriguing is the skull's location, just beneath the street level and close to an underground water pipe.
For us, it's very interesting, this find of the skull, because we are in front of a real time and a real life in this area before the eruption of 79.
The team is trying to find other clues that could shed light on their discovery.
Yeah. You find also other bones around?
Yeah. Here?
Yeah, okay.
A tantalizing possibility is this is the skull of an animal killed as a sacrificial offering to the gods. But Mario needs more evidence. The team hunts for telltale ceramic cups that would once contain other offerings.
Another part of the skeleton there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we
nothing
don't
else.
find the cups in.
No ceramics.
Okay. Now we continue to clean. We remove the skull and to understand if there are other parts of the bones of the skull of the animal.
The team must carefully extract all the compacted soil before they attempt the delicate task of removing the skull. The cavers are crawling ever deeper into the underfloor heating system.
Okay, come on, Mario.
They must document every detail of the subterranean world. No one knows what could lurk in this space.
Oh, look down there. There's a bat. So the spaces over there are lower.
What?
The spaces over there are lower.
Yeah, it's around 15 centimeter.
The invention of the Hypocaust system revolutionized bathhouses, allowing bathers to linger longer in pleasantly warm water before stepping onto a heated floor. But comfort above ground creates a highly hazardous, cramped space below.
Altezza 82.
I hear some voices, so they must be working, but I can't see them anymore.
Under the women's hot immersion pool,
C'è la testudo sopra qua.
the cavers find and photograph one of the best preserved testudos in the Roman world. Built to be both fire-resistant and watertight, the tank's sloping underside had been carefully engineered so that the heat from the furnace that was once nearby created a circulating supply of hot water. Beneath the floor of the women's caldarium, the cavers spot something else that could help Monica's investigation.
What do you think is written here?
I think it's a stump.
At the Insula 17 housing block, the dig's chief archaeologist, Antonella Corallini, is overseeing the delicate retrieval of the animal's skull.
Scalzarlo da sotto, vai tu, vai tu. Piano piano.
If they don't release all the compacted soil around the 2,000-year-old skull, it could shatter.
Da sotto, vai tu, vai tu. Tanto hai
Da qui non riesco.
Oh, beautiful. This is the heat.
This is not skull of sheep, it's a skull of a bull. It's very interesting now.
It's a fascinating find. The skull of a bull.
Very big with the point of horn.
It's interesting because it's very strange that we find a skull of bull.
A bull's skull is a rare find in Pompeii. In ancient Rome, bulls were highly prized and expensive animals.
January was lived for the gods, for the ritual sacrifice.
Romans believed animal sacrifices could offer insights into the will of the gods. Bulls were among the largest and most prestigious animals killed in this way. An animal that showed no fear before its death was a good omen, a sign of approval from the gods. The animal's internal organs were inspected by a priest called an augur. If they looked diseased or damaged, the sacrifice had to be repeated with a new animal. If the organs were healthy, the Romans offered a portion to the gods by burning them on the altar, and then feasted on the rest of the animal. The team carefully cleans the skull, ready for future expert investigation. Marks left by axe or hammer blows might confirm Mario's suspicion the bull was killed in a sacrificial ritual.
For us now it's important to understand why this bull was lived in this area in front of this wall. It's a possibility for us that we have this ritual time in this area before the eruption of 79.
The team suspects that it's no coincidence the skull was found here, right alongside the fresh water pipe. Perhaps the bull was sacrificed to commemorate these homes making their connection to the public water supply. Urence's investigation into the life of Marcus Venerius Secundio has brought him to one of Pompeii's most spectacular sites.
Wow, this is so beautiful. This is the Odeon of Pompeii, a very important place.
The Odeon was one of 2 theatres in Pompeii.
Its acoustic is really special, really particular. So you can hear how the sound is surrounding you. The Odeon was just for music and music performance and for music opera. They built one particular place just for this kind of shows.
The inscription discovered on Marcus's tomb reveals that after he gained his freedom, he became a priest and paid for a 4-day festival of games, plays, and music.
To pay all this performance, all these musical shows, of course, he must be very, very rich. In that moment, for sure, Marco Venerio was a very important, one of the most important person in Pompeii.
Marcus's festival could also reveal why he was buried and not burnt. The inscription specifies performances in both Roman Latin and also Greek. This was a complete surprise.
Is he Greek, or he was very close to the Greek culture? And we know that Greeks in Greece, they have inhumation, they have burials in that moment.
Greek plays and the Greek-style burial suggest either Marcus had Greek ancestors or he was a great fan of Greek culture. The DNA analysis might resolve the mystery. Urence's discoveries allow him to piece together the rags-to-riches story of the best preserved body ever found in Pompeii. Marcus Venerius Secundio was enslaved by the city of Pompeii, a subject of not one, but of all the citizens. They chose him to guard a temple dedicated to Venus, the patron goddess of Pompeii. When Marcus was freed from enslavement, he joined the Augustales, an elite order of priests devoted to the cult of the emperor. Like his fellow priests, he became a rich benefactor and funded a festival of plays, music, and games. His wealth and high status afforded him a monumental tomb, among the most prominent in Pompeii.
It's like a dream. It's something very impressive, very, very amazing. Marco Venerius was a slave of the city, and he ends becoming one of the most important persons in Pompeii.
Under the Stabian Baths, cavers Mauro and Mario discover a rare stamped inscription.
M-A-F. I wonder if there's more.
It's crucial to take a clear photograph to get the best possible evidence for Monica.
Are you done? Oh, perfect. Can I see what you found?
Yes.
What is that?
This is the studio.
Ah, va bene, sì. Wow. Perfect. Oh, yeah, you can kind of see.
Yeah.
Incredible.
The photos reveal that from the underside, the bronze plates of the immersion pool hot water tank are joined with 2 neat rows of rivets. The overlapping plates look like an armored animal shell. Another compelling reason why the Romans used testudo, the Latin word for tortoise, for the tank.
2 rows everywhere the 2 sheets overlap.
I think this is one of the best preserved ever. And you can also really see it from below and from above and fully study how it worked. And this makes it really exciting.
The discovery of the stamp could help solve the biggest mystery. How did the layout of the baths change over time?
Right over here is where we found the stamp. So we have the an M.
M, A,
Yeah.
O or Q,
maybe an R, an M again.
M again.
And this looks like a P, and this could be an F.
The stamp is a mark that identifies the tile maker. It's a totally unexpected find.
Oh, wow, perfect. This is like the first complete stamp I know of in the Stadion Bath. And wow, this is really exciting.
Matching the stamp to others in Pompeii could give an exact time period for the floor's installation.
Whether this stamp is known in Pompeii, because it's really, really important, it might potentially give us a date for the hypocauste system. So this is really exciting. If it's really a late stamp, we would have a proof that they had to remodel it.
Further analysis reveals the tile stamp is one of several in Pompeii that appear to date to after AD 62. In that year, a major earthquake rocked the city and damaged many buildings. The people of Pompeii took the opportunity to modernize the building, fitting a brand new floor above an upgraded heating system. But the citizens had only a few years to enjoy their majestic new bathhouse before Vesuvius's cataclysmic eruption in AD 79.
Everything we excavate, that we reveal, I think adds to the picture of history of Roman Pompeii in a significant way. So excavation really has a purpose to help us reconstruct history.
Pompeii is slowly giving up its secrets, revealing the everyday lives of its people. Bathers enjoying the public baths, worshippers making offerings to their gods, and enslaved people rising to great wealth. As archaeologists continue to excavate this extraordinary 2,000-year-old city frozen in time, their discoveries will shed fresh insights into life and death at the height of the Roman Empire.